Strixhaven's main web fiction story arc is completed, and with a brand new plane filled to the brim with characters new and old, there's a lot of narrative to get through. But with such a packed plane, and characters all jostling for the limelight, does everyone get a passing grade, or do some need to go back and hit the books? Welcome to Magic the Flavouring, the Magic the Gathering podcast, where we talk about all things Magic, flavour design and lore. I am your host, Andy Mann.
Hello, this is Nathan Cancel.
And today we are going to be going through our Strixhaven story review. We do this for every set, you know the deal by now. Since they brought back the web fiction, we actually have story to review on the regular, which is kind of crazy. And this is the Strixhaven one. The side stories haven't finished coming out yet. I suspect there's some rewrites happening, but that has not been confirmed.
Wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, sure. So we're going to focus on the main story today, and believe me, there is more than enough of it in some respects. In some respects, there's more than enough of it. God blimey, the coffee's hitting me. There is more than enough of it to go through, so we will focus on the main stories today. And we might come back to the side stories at a different time. We haven't really done that in the past, because sometimes they fed into the main narrative, and then sometimes we've just completely ignored them, which is kind of harsh. But maybe we'll come back to these ones, because I think there's going to be a lot of cool stuff in there, which for stuff that may be lacking in the main story for us this time around, we might find in the side stories. I don't know. We'll have a look, see. But today we're going to be focusing on the main stories. We haven't really spoken much about our thoughts and feelings about it, like before this episode.
We've kept it as a surprise. I mean, I think there's one. I think I said one overarching thing to you, and that was that, as with the Kaldheim story and to a lesser extent, Zendikar Rising, it feels a little rushed. I feel like that's my main feeling, is that it feels like 5 episodes could have been longer. I feel like it didn't. I feel like 5 was quite a short amount to have a lot of different character point of views in, and there was a little bit of what I like to call like that payoff. It didn't feel like there was quite enough build up for the payoffs sometimes. Obviously, we'll get into this as we talk about it. But I feel like the story points were really interesting. I would have just liked them drawn out a little bit more. I mean, it's more to get into, right? More is more, as we like to say, and I feel like they could have done with a bit more.
Sure. So yeah, we're returning back to the 5 episode structure of stories. They call them episodes, which I don't know if I like that. I don't know why that bugs me. Episodes? Story episode? It's not a sitcom. I don't know. That's just a weird thing. I just looked seeing it like all in a row there.
Yeah, chapters, right? You'd think
chapter.
Like chapter
there
1,
we go. I couldn't think of the other word it could have been. Yeah, they should be chapters. So we go, 5 for the main story, 5 for the side story as well, which I think they only did 4. I think we were discussing for the Zendikar one, but they did 5. Yeah. So how they've done it in Kaldheim. And yeah, you're right. There's a lot going on, and I think this time, as we'll kind of go through the story breakdown, it's because there are so many characters with their own little arcs that all kind of coalesce, whereas in Zendikar and on Kaldheim, whilst they did pack characters in there, multiple characters, it was very much like 1 or 2 person story, whereas this is like we got 5 different things going on. But we'll get to that when we get to that. I think I'm just going to give the story breakdown. So if you've not read all of the story episodes yet, I would go read them now. Because there is so much going on, I'm not going to dive too deep into any one point as I go through my speed read of the entirety of the main story. I will be glossing over bits and bobs, and then we can break down later on. So yeah, if you've not read them, go back and read them, and then we'll jump into here. So here we go. We find Will and Rowan Kenrith fresh from their adventures on Kylum, which is the Battle World plane, and they are arriving on the plane of Arcavios at Strixhaven School for Mages. At some point before the story, they are met by Kasmina, who was the planeswalker from War of the Spark, as I'm sure everyone is aware, and they have left Garrick's care. So, I mean, straight off the bat, I'm just going to stop right in the first point. We don't get to see any Will and Rowan adventures with Garrick?
Yep. It feels like a whole big... This is the weirdest thing about Will and Rowan. I'm glad that they've kind of... I feel like this was like almost like a soft reset for like their story arc, because there's this weird gap in the middle, right? And then this whole Kylum thing also, it's such a strange timeline, as it were, for them, that we feel like we're missing a bit of development kind of before we get to see them here. And so for me, it felt like a bit of a reset, considering that we've seen them already in Wielded Quest kind of go through their arc there, and they've obviously had development in Kylum that they reference within these stories as well. We don't get to see it, so it kind of feels a bit cheated, and it feels like we kind of just have to kind of make it up on our own. And yeah, I'd have loved to see some Daddy Garrick doing some Daddy Garrick things, like looking after the kids, but yeah, unfortunately we don't get to see that.
I agree. They immediately jump into student life, so they go onto the school campus office and immediately start dueling with other students, as is the way of Strixhaven students. But pretty quickly it becomes very clear throughout Will and Rowan's story arc that they're kind of heading off in two different directions, both magically and in their own persons. So Will's overbearing bookishness rubs up against Rowan's carefree disinterest in studying, and this kind of starts to drive the pair apart. Will wants to live up to their Kenrith name and respect the kind of school structure. He wants to make sure that they're representing themselves in a positive way, whereas Rowan wants to live her life away from their name and kind of away from Will as well, which obviously doesn't go down well. They have a series of arguments throughout the different episodes, and this culminates in a confrontation at a game of Mage Tower. So they're both in the audience, or the stands at a game of Mage Tower, where they're watching students play this sport of Strixhaven. And Will provokes Rowan by saying that she is very much like their mother, their birth mother, a witch, which doesn't go down well with Rowan. Rowan kind of loses her shit at Will, as you would expect, and her growing power, which we've seen kind of getting a little bit too out of control, flickers out, and they physically attack one another. So Rowan hits Will with an electric blast, and then Will retorts by trying to freeze her legs. This brings them to the attention of Professor Onyx, who corners the pair and marches them to her office in Strixhaven. Professor Onyx, as we find out very early in the story, is the Planeswalker Liliana Vess, and we discover that she is also a former Witherbloom student at the college as well. So she was a former student of Strixhaven. She is at Strixhaven, to teach, but really she's there with an ulterior motive. She has returned to Arcavios to seek a spell that will bring Gideon back to life. As we all know, Gideon sacrificed himself to draw off Bolas's power at the end of War of the Spark, and unfortunately died as a result. She first searches the Biblioplex, which is the big library on Strixhaven, then consults with Beladros Witherbloom, who is the Elder Dragon founder of the Witherbloom College, and finally goes in search of an Archaic, who is one of those kind of mystic giants, to find answers, but cannot seem to find what she is looking for. So yeah, kind of cool seeing Liliana back in the story. I seem to remember very distinctly during the latest core set where all the Planeswalkers in. I can't. Is it M21? I can never
21,
find.
yeah.
Yeah. I think I said when we did our M21 flavor review that I was happy with Liliana's arc, but I don't want to see her again for 4 years. And yet they dragged me back in. I absolutely loved Liliana's arc during this.
Yeah.
What did you think?
I think this is my big question is this the last we're seeing of her for a while? Do you feel like this is like the closing of her chapter, as it were? Because they got rid of the chain veil, so that continuing arc, Raven Man is just seemed to be a dropped flip point that's never coming back, which was annoyingly interesting. But obviously they've got the closure on Gideon. Just spoilers, she doesn't bring him back, and then she kind of gets over, which is nice. I think it's good for her to get that kind of closure where she's not continuing down the same path of sometimes you need the scars, right, to prove that you went through the battles, and I feel like it would kind of diminish his sacrifice, and plus we don't want a zombie Gideon, right?
Yeah,
but I think she came across quite well. It's nice to see her being a bit more of a mentor, having a bit more of a soft side. It was nice seeing her being like the smart one, like, because she is considerably older than most people that we meet in Magic stories. Like and I feel like that comes across quite well with her disdain of the other faculty and that kind of thing. What kind of confuses me is by the end of her arc, she obviously goes back to having the Liliana Vess name, which is fine. But then we don't see a conversation with her and Kasmina, because Kasmina is clearly like quite all-knowing and comes across as being very in the know about everything that's happening. So did they have a conversation post War of the Spark, which is why then she was Professor Onyx? Does she know that she used to go as a student there? Surely there'd be like alumni, right? And there would have been, her name would have been written down.
We don't really know, but we'll kind of get onto that in a minute. Through Liliana's time on Arcavios, she comes into contact with multiple Auric agents. The Auric are a school of dark wizards, or dark mages, I should say, and she believes that they are a threat to the school, and this is what she warns Will and Rowan about in her office. The Auric are led by Exodus. Exodus's plan is to destroy Strixhaven for perceived slights against him when he was a student, and what he perceives as kind of an arcane elitism. So he is the kind of dark mage of this set and the kind of primary antagonist. And although we don't dive into it too much, it kind of just seems like he is very against the whole Strixhaven school system, and so he is trying to stop them from doing whatever it is they're doing. It's all a little bit up in the air, to be honest with you. He's been conducting mystical experiments and kind of mysterious tests and trying to control creatures called mage hunters, who are these giant insectile beasts, which they are absolutely terrifying as well. We haven't really spoken much about the mage hunters, but they are yeah, they're pretty full on. But he's had little success up until this point. That is until he meets Luca. Luca is on this plane. Do we find out why he's on this plane?
No, that's the
No.
thing. The thing that's cool about Luke was that he just kind of popped up right at the end of the
Sure.
first story, and just
Yeah.
got this last little point of view. And for me, it was a little bit because I didn't think at this point we knew he was in the set. I was like, oh, okay, Luca's here. Oh, this is gonna be interesting. And I feel like he might have been there, kind of obviously to fulfill the role of controlling all the mage hunters. But otherwise, we have no. I think this is supposed to be where he came. He went to immediately after Ikoria. I think that's what they're kind of giving us,
Sure.
is that there is he didn't go planeswalking to other places. He kind of came to Ikoria and immediately got hit with, as you'll probably say, with all of the people kind of being distrustful of him. So I feel like yeah, we've gone directly from Ikoria into Strixhaven or into Arcavios, and I don't think there was any impetus for him to do it beyond that's where he first planeswalked.
Yeah, because Sundered Bond, there wasn't really many signifiers saying where on the timeline it was, except for quite broad strokes of, well, this planeswalker exists and this planeswalker exists. So yeah, I think maybe you're right. Which kind of opens up a few questions. He seems fairly like au fait with planeswalking, like considering he may have only done it once. Do you know what I mean? But whatever, that's very different. That's a different conversation. Luca is on the plane, and he was found himself very quickly being shunned by the local townsfolk. So local townsfolk on Arcavios, especially around the school, are very distrustful of Arik agents infiltrating the local area because they see them as being a menace, and they accuse him, despite the fact he looks nothing like one, of being an Arik agent. Luca takes this pretty badly because he essentially sees it as the same sort of fear and distrust that took over General Kudro back in Dranith on Ikoria, and comes to blows with the locals. He gets away from the locals who are trying to attack him, and almost dies in the kind of wastes of Arcavios until he is befriended by a fox called Mia. Is it Mila or Mia? Sorry.
I think Mila.
Sure,
Mila.
yeah. I wrote it down, but it didn't seem right when I said it. A fox called Mila, who he saves from death and bonds with genuinely, rather than overtly controlling her with his magic. So for those people who aren't quite in sort of remembrance of what Luca's powers are, he was a bonder on Ikoria, which kind of kicked off his whole story arc, which basically means he has a mystical connection to beasts and animals, but through his kind of planeswalker spark igniting and his kind of role as like a kind of an uber mage, which is what planeswalkers are, he can also extend this power to oppressively controlling animals against their will. So rather than genuinely bonding with animals, he can also just take control of them without their agency. But with this fox, he actually bonds with it genuinely and forms a connection, and Mila then kind of becomes his partner on Strixhaven. Extus and Luca join forces, and they want to use Luca's innate beast-controlling magic, like we've just described, to control a giant army of mage hunters, which they do to attack the school of Strixhaven. During this big attack from Extus and Luca, Luca finds himself battling Kasmina, who has been keeping tabs on all the different unfolding events. As you say, she has kind of powers to see through her owls, although they kind of describe them as being false owls, so maybe they're a manifestation of her magic. I'm not quite
Well, these
sure.
are the fractals that I think she makes on her Planeswalker card. This
sure.
is how I imagine it. Because she's blue and green, clearly she's obviously not Quandrix specifically, but she's using Quandrixy magic, so I assume that they're fractal owls. Fractals. There we go.
Yeah. I mean, her whole magic, as we sort of see in the fight between Luca and Kasmina, is that she's kind of, she's the bird wizard, as kind of is more apparent, but we haven't really seen her do much. But, she uses, like, blades of wind, and, like, when she planeswalks, it's all feathers and, all this kind of stuff. So, yeah, she's the bird wizard. So the Kasmina and Luca are fighting. The deans of the colleges try to evacuate the school, while some of them put up a little bit of a fight against the incoming mage hunters and Arik agents. And Liliana, Will, and Rowan travel to the underground tunnels beneath Strixhaven in search of Extus. Liliana seems to think that the main battle above is a distraction, which she's right in thinking, and so she goes in search of where she thinks Extus may be for his grand plan. We find Extus in the Hall of the Oracles, which is a large chamber underneath Strixhaven, and it's a chamber containing Strixhaven's own snarl. So we know the snarls on Arcavios are where the two planes collided and their mana merged to make the mana of Arcavios, but apparently Strixhaven has its own mini snarl, or at least it has one of the snarls. I kind of assume it's its own one because it
I
can't
think
just
so
be.
too.
Yeah,
Because there's all of the snarls have their own land, right? And
yeah,
then
exactly.
the Hall of the Oracles. Yeah, I don't know what color manor it is. If there is any kind of, I don't necessarily think there is.
All the colors.
You know what I mean? It kind of feels. It felt a little bit Maelstrom like. It felt a bit
Yeah.
like when we were at Lara, and obviously all of the shards were coalescing into the nexus, as it were. Yeah, it feels a little bit like that.
For sure. At this snarl, Extus is performing some sort of ritual. They fight with Liliana, Will, Rowan, and Extus, all have a big battle, but Liliana is transported away using a transportation spell from Extus. She gets blipped miles away from the school, leaving Will and Rowan alone with the Auric agents. Extus's plan is revealed. He wishes to summon something called a Blood Avatar to destroy the school. So the Blood Avatar is kind of a hangover from the Age of Blood, which is the Blood Age, which is the time before the Mystical Age, which is what we're in now on Arcavios. So it's basically a giant four-armed warrior made of blood with swords and axes and things. In the cards, it looks pretty badass, I'm not going to lie to you. But it's very sort of like, it's classic high fantasy, summon a blood demon. If you're picturing a blood demon and you've not seen the cards, you're right in what you're thinking, essentially.
Yeah.
This kind of battle then sort of kicks up again with Rowan, Will, and Arcavius with the Blood Avatar. Rowan tries to pull magic directly from the Snarl to defeat the Avatar with essentially raw power. So throughout Rowan's arc, her whole thing is that she feels like her spark magic can just kind of become as powerful as she wants, and that's how she's going to get better as a mage. Whereas Will's whole thing is that you need to study and be precise. So obviously there's that kind of classic dichotomy. So Rowan tries to pull as much magic as she can from the Snarl, which X is using to summon the Blood Avatar, and tries to basically... someone described it as being like Dark Phoenix from X-Men. So he just kind of like explodes with power.
Yeah, the card Crack with Power does look like it's taken and ripped specifically from that film. Yeah, it felt
for sure.
very much like that.
So she tries to deal with it that way, but it doesn't quite work because she can't control the power that's coursing through her. And actually, it takes the combined efforts, twin powers activate, of Will and Rowan. So Will's precise knowledge of spells and his kind of accuracy in using them for the right situation, keeping an intelligent mind, and Rowan's mass of power, if you like, to kind of focus that spell. They manage to control the Blood Avatar and take power away from Extus, and use the Blood Avatar to crush Extus to death, which is nice and light, keeping it family friendly.
Well, yeah, my reading of that was that the Blood Avatar they didn't will the Blood Avatar to kill Extus. It's just that the Blood Avatar was no longer under Extus' control, so just sees thing and kills it. Like, you know what I mean? I feel like it was one of those, like, he just sees the first thing in front of it and goes, right, cool, kill you, crush. Unless it was also angry at trying to be controlled by Extus. Because surely the Blood Avatar should, if it has any intelligence, be pretty happy that Extus brought him back from wherever the hell they were, or where he summoned them from. But yeah, poor Extus gets crunched.
The line that precedes him getting crushed is something I'm going to reference a little bit later, but that little moment is a little kind of microcosm into my thoughts and feelings about this story, so we'll get onto that for sure. So yes, Extus is killed. The Blood Avatar starts to dissipate, but just before it fully dissipates, its arm, holding one of its giant swords, swings down and amputates one of Will's legs, leaving him maimed and on the floor. Two of the deans of the college manage to reach Will and Rowan because they kind of figure out what's going on, and they scuttle them away to safety. In the aftermath, which is in the last little bit of the last episode of the story, we see that the school is kind of back to normal. Things don't stay broken forever on Strixhaven, apparently. Luca fled the plane during the battle, so he's not still kicking around. Will and Rowan have reconciled at this point and are kind of, understanding that their differences can actually be part of their strength, and are being students in the college. They also make a little reference to the fact that Rowan still does want to find a way for them to planeswalk without each other. So there is that as well. Liliana, as you said earlier on, is finding closure with her situation with Gideon. She kind of accepts that things need to move on and that she won't be able to bring him back from the dead. And she fulfills her role fully as a teacher of the college, something she was really only using as a guise to have access to Strixhaven. She drops the Professor Onyx moniker and returns to being Liliana Vess. What was her moniker at the end of Anariora? So that's completely gone as well, which it's fine. Yeah,
fine.
Bit cheesy pie, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So that's fine. And Kasmina, this is the real sort of like trailing off into future stories. Kasmina's attention is now reaffirmed on Will and Rowan. So at the very start of the story, we kind of get the sense that Kasmina has an interest in Will and Rowan, being young planeswalkers who can also be developed as mages on Strixhaven. That thread kind of gets lost a little bit, but then gets picked up at the very end, where Kasmina, seeing sort of the darkness to come, starts to think about, well, Will and Rowan seem to be quite powerful, and they're planeswalkers. This is a good thing. Very much how, like in Kaldheim, we had like opening up with a Phyrexian and then finishing off with a Phyrexian, which is kind of cool.
Mm.
I mean, on Phyrexians, I completely forgot about this up until right this second. No Phyrexians in this story.
Nope. I'm kind of glad, because I feel like we expected, obviously everyone was expecting like Ginger Taxius to pop up at some point, and I'm kind of glad they haven't just gone with the cool. Every set we're going to get a little bit more of a hint. I feel like Vorinclex was deliberately kind of dropped out of nowhere, and I think it's fine. I think like there was enough going on in this set that it didn't need another side story. I think it was distracting enough with Kaldheim, because it was the much more interesting part of the story than necessarily seeing, because we didn't even really see like the whole Valky arc very like fleshed out too much with what Tibble was doing. But that was like for me less interesting than why is Vorinclex here? What's he doing? You know, and the closing chapter I think was my favorite chapter out of the entire story. So I'm glad they didn't have that, because there was enough going on and enough to be distracting.
So there we go. So that's the entire breadth of the story going on. I mean, if it seems I'm reading from notes as I'm going, and I'm still tripping up and having to remind myself of bits and kind of going back over this, that, and the other. And I don't necessarily think that's because I'm a terrible podcaster. I think that's because there is so much going on, and there are so many different viewpoints that even though I've written it all down as simply as I can, there's still just a lot, right? And I kind of feel bad. So the author of these stories is Adana Washington, who I don't believe has written for Magic before. I could be wrong on that. They could have written a side story and I just missed it. But this is their first full arc. I didn't dislike the writing at all. I will say, just as a kind of preface from moving forward, because I might delve into whingy, whiny territory, the writing wasn't for me. It's not been my favourite writing for Magic. That is not to say that I think it's bad writing, because not every writer can kind of connect with you fully. And there's some really good stuff in here, which we'll kind of move on to a little bit. I just think they had this impossible task. The same thing that, I don't want to keep defending fucking Greg Wiseman, but, of having the same thing with War of the Spark, where you had to fit all these story arcs into a finite space. And Adana Washington's been given 4 or 5 different story arcs, some of whom are brand new characters. Others have got like massive story arcs going on already. And she has to fit them in 5 episodes?
Yeah.
That's a lot, man.
This is why I think that 5 isn't enough. I feel like, again, maybe they wanted it specifically to be only 5 weeks. I don't understand why the story needs to be condensed so much. Maybe they feel like people aren't going to engage. But I'm like, the people that are going to be reading these stories are going to read them if you do 10 episodes, right? Or 10 chapters, sorry. So I think, at that point, when you have so many boxes you need to tick, it's very hard to do much more than tick the boxes. And that's kind of what these stories felt like. It felt a bit like paint by numbers, because there was only so much you can fit in before you're like, right, cool, I have to now move on to the next chapter, and then the next chapter. And it did feel like a lot of the plot points that we could have waited on a little bit longer, or certain like bits of progression, like Luca's arc, for example, just out of nowhere, he's just there, and then he's controlling the mage hunters, and then he's gone again, and you're like, oh, okay, blink, you miss it, which is fine for the most part. But when you get a character who's kind of wanting potentially for them, they want to make him a bit more complex, it's harder to get the little bits right when you have to just do the broad
it's interesting
strokes.
I mean, it's a funny thing, isn't it? Because with the amount of episodes that they go through, and I'm going to pick up back on your point about Luca in a second, because Luca fascinates me as a character. He doesn't everyone, funnily enough, but I really like his kind of arc. I don't like him. That's not to say I like him. We'll get on to this point. It's this thing. But the 5 episodes, it isn't enough to tell the stories that they want to tell. But I think I can see and I commend the idea that then it's not 5 episodes, it is 10. It's just the other 5 are doing the stuff that we like and the stuff we want to see, which is the little slice of life episodes. Because the 5 this time around are focusing on each of the kind of main students that they've been using for the marketing purposes of each of the different colleges, right? And it's their kind of day in the life at Strixhaven, which is the story I want to be reading. And I think that's where the kind of maybe the cognitive distance for me of saying that these are the main stories and the side stories. I mean, that's the terminology they have to use to make it clean. But really, for me, the main story is I want to see what goes on in Strixhaven because it's a new plane that I want to see. The side story or the overarching story, if you like, is the kind of push forward of the plot with the Planeswalkers. And yeah, we need to get to the Phyrexians at some point. So it's not really 5 stories. It is 10. It's just they have to fit this section of the story into 5. And you can't really ask, it's tough. You can't really ask them to then do 15 stories or 20 stories. Like, where does it kind of stop? It's a very tough situation, I think.
I think it's interesting as well when you look at the number of story spotlight cards. Like, there's 15 in the set, which is the most out of any set, apart from War of the Spark, obviously, because it had the 3 acts that it had to get in there. But that kind of is quite telling of where there shows that there's a fair few of the story spotlight cards that I think just showed things like defend the campus. We're like, of course they defended the campus. It's not really like a big story. No, it's just nice to see the story happening on the cards. But at the same time, clearly there was a lot to have to say and a lot to put in there. And yeah, again, like, it's fine. The problem I find is that it makes it harder to attach yourself to Planeswalkers and understand them when you don't have as much character building, right? You don't get to hear their voice and their decisions. You can't justify their actions so much. So it does feel sometimes there's a lot of just nebulous things happening, and we're just kind of along for the ride instead of being able to delve into the emotions and understand their thought processes and their intention, which is fine, again, but it does mean that certain characters come across a little bit flat because we don't get the like Exodus, for example, was a really good example of, like, we don't really get a good justification for why he is what he is. He's just villain of the week, you know. I mean, he couldn't be more twirly mustache. Will, you know, the things like when he's saying in his mind that he needs to promote one of his agents because he does a good job, and then immediately uses him as a meat shield. And you're like, cool, I get that's exactly what I'd expect.
I quite liked that.
Yeah, it's exactly what I'd expect from Exodus, but that's kind of all. Those are kind of, that's all we get from the way he treats his. We get told that he should be nice to this guy, and then immediately gets him killed. And you're like, cool, that gives me a bit of information about Exodus, but I also don't get then how much of a, like, why is he so cruel? Why is he so dissonant to even his own followers? You know, like, I know means to an end and all that, but we don't know the means necessarily too well. It's not fleshed out, and the end isn't necessarily fleshed out. So the means to the end doesn't make sense to me, and it doesn't matter as much. And I feel like that's maybe where it's difficult when you do it, as you say, have only 5 stories to tell the whole arc, is you don't get to delve into the nitty gritties of the whys that people doing. It's just the hows and the whats, which is fine, but I like the whys. You know? I mean, that's my personal.
Yeah, it is interesting, isn't it? I kind of feel like that this whole story could have done with one less arc to tell, maybe just one. And unfortunately, as much it was my favorite story arc, and I really want to talk about it, I think this was the one to drop from this set, and that would be Liliana's, because Liliana doesn't need to be in this story. It's kind of fun to see Luca there because Luca's a newer character, and actually I don't mind so much that he kind of just blips in and out because he doesn't have his story wrapped up, which is the big thing. I think you and I were really worried that he was going to come to this set. We knew, I think when we spoke about it, that he'd bonded with Mila because we'd read that story already. Or like we kind of saw it on the cards. And we were like, oh, is he already softened up? Have they already kind of like made him the good guy again? But no, they had him. He's still on his vendetta, right? Which I like, because if they then tried to tie up his story, that would have been too much as well. Will and Rowan are obviously the main characters of the set, so they need to have their whole thing. And I kind of feel like their story was told quite poorly, actually. There are some things I really liked about this 5-episode thing. I think Will and Rowan's story did not hit the mark for me, and I'll say why in a second. And Kasmina's obviously there as well. So you've got all these different characters that kind of
That's the thing, right? Kasmina is there
She's
as well.
There as
that's
well.
That's literally the summary of her entire character arc. She has no arc in this whatsoever. She is just there. She has a little bit of a fight. We find nothing more out about her, and at the end, it's still like, guess I'll pay more attention to the twins. Now it's like, cool. Why? Tell me something about your love. I want to know where you from. What's your favorite flavor of ice cream? Something, anything. You know, whatever. That's my gripe.
No, I know. I agree. And I just sort of feel like, out of all the characters that are there, the one who was put in and was fabulous, and it was my favorite part of this whole main story arc was Liliana's journey and the kind of stories that involved her. But she really, from a narrative point of view, you could have taken her out. Had any other teacher or any other kind of MacGuffin to get the Will and Rowan moving, and you wouldn't have missed it.
Even
You
just
wouldn't
have
have missed it.
Casmina fulfill that role.
Yeah,
Right?
just have Casmina fulfill that role, which is a
Because
shame.
that
And then you could have wrapped up Liliana somewhere else. But, you know.
exactly, yeah. It did feel maybe they wanted to shoehorn her in to get the culmination of a story arc out of the way. I'm glad they touched on her guilt, and I'm glad that she got over it, as it were. She got some closure. But it did feel like when she went to go and see Belladros and get told, "Well, we don't do that kind of necromancy here." It felt like cool, like good. I'm glad that it's annoying that she's still trying to fix a problem that shouldn't be fixed, and she's still dealing with her guilt. Cool, but it was such a side story in of itself. It felt like that should have been a side story that had nothing to
I
do with the
agree.
main plot.
I
And yet
was
it was
about to say
in
that,
the main
yeah.
story. It's like, well, why? Why is this in here? And it's cool that she goes and talks to one of the dragons, because it's the only time we see any of the dragons as well, which is another interesting point. Beyond the talk of their fire coming in like the last episode, like you don't actually see or hear from any of the other dragons apart from the little bit that she speaks to Belladros with, which is, again, it's nice to get a little bit of that, but it did feel very unnecessary and ancillary to the rest of the story.
I feel like when it comes to those big characters like the dragons, and it was the same thing for the gods on Kaldheim, and the same thing for a lot of the Cosmos monsters on Zendikar. No, sorry, they were on Kaldheim too. I forget which one's which. I think for a lot of the gods on Kaldheim is that they're in the set and they are the mythics, but if they had to try and tell a story utilizing all of them, they really would need to do like a set of 12 or 13 stories. So I think those mythics we can't expect moving forwards to see all of a set of characters, because they like doing cycles, and especially with things like commander formats being popular, they want to pump as many named characters in as they can. So having the dip in and out, like we didn't see all the deans, we saw a few of them, and we've got reference to a lot more of them, and I suspect that's obviously where they want to use the side stories, is where they want to flesh out these kind of more named characters, because we've already seen in Ruther's story, for example, she immediately within the first 5 seconds meets Nasario Novilda, right? So we know that they're there. But I think in the main story, yeah, they are pretty ineffectual. Let's talk about Liliana a little bit, because like, as much as I have been saying in this episode that I feel like she could have been cut out and no damage would have been done, she was my favourite part of this main story. And there's a lot of stuff that's going on with Liliana that I think there's a lot of really interesting lines. And as much as I say, Adana Washington's writing wasn't for me necessarily, her writing of Liliana and her conversation specifically with Belladros was very good. That whole scene is very, very cool. So this comes in episode 2, Lessons, and this is where we kind of find out that Liliana is trying to use Strixhaven as a means to get Gideon back. And there's a few like lines in their conversation that I want to dig into. She says the line, please, so this is her pleading with Belladros to give her the knowledge to bring Gideon back. Please, he took my death. Help me give him back his life. Which is a really interesting way to put it for someone who is a necromancer, right? She doesn't want to bring him back. She wants to give him life, which is not something necromancers are fussed with. They don't give a fuck about giving things life. They want to animate the dead. So I just thought it was a really nice little turn of phrase that she's not trying to necromancer him back. If that was the case, she could probably just do it herself.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess she needs the body, right? She would have needed the body, and he dusted away, as it were.
I guess, but yeah, I just think it's more than that. It's more than bringing him back from the dead.
Yeah, because that's the thing, right? She doesn't want it to be like just that normal, like, oh, subservient thing. She wants to, again, give him his life back again, which it feels fun, almost like childish, which is funny that it's affected her so much that she has almost this like quite basic, because she's a proficient necromancer, one of the most proficient necromancers we've ever met in the story, and yet she still can't. It's funny that she can't get over the fact if she was cheated that her death was taken away from her, which is another really interesting point, because I guess after being so long under the contract trying to get out from under the contract, she must have had a certain amount of acceptance, right? She must have accepted the finality of it, and then the fact that Gideon not only sacrificed himself for her, which must be difficult when she knew she was going through a point of where most people disliked her for right reasons. She was being a bit of a dick, and she did some bad things. So I imagine if for her, it must feel a bit annoying to be cheated. Yeah, one out of the death that she maybe even kind of was starting to accept. But then to have someone so selflessly kind of sacrifice themselves for her when no one else is likely to, it must be a difficult thing to have to deal with when you're not used to people being selfless for you, right? And you've been so selfish your entire life. And it was kind of strange to see her almost desperate, right, to bring her back. And for someone who is the best of necromancer to be kind of like fishing, going, please, anyway, scrabbling for any kind of answer. That was kind of nice. And it was good to see that kind of almost soft, desperate side of her.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. There's a couple of things there which I think you've absolutely hit the nail on the head. It's she thinks at this point in time, or this is how I read it, and clearly how you read it, that she deserved to die to at that moment. She, as recompense for her actions, as also taking agency for herself, the whole thing, she wanted to destroy Bolas at the cost of her own life, and she thought that that was the right thing to do. And indeed, when More of the Spark came out, one of the criticisms was that actually maybe Gideon did take away that agency slightly from her, and that, you know, it would have been better, maybe moralistically, that she did die, because it was, you know, her choice. But as it is, Gideon took that opportunity to save her, and maybe in his way prove to her that she shouldn't throw her life away, and that it
Yeah, her
actually,
life was worth saving.
yeah. And
Yeah.
he also had his own story arc where he, in his youth, made a mistake to the point where he believed that his life was worth giving up to kind of reconcile and kind of bring his story to an end. So it wasn't like a total sort of bait and switch. But there's also the thing that you said about her being childlike, which I think is exactly right, because her experience as a child when she was becoming a healer was that she tried to heal her sick brother Josu, and
That went really well. That went so well.
and ended up turning him into a lich. So this idea that, you know, she's still trying to change the situation, and this is what I really liked about Adana Washington's characterization of Liliana, is that it's still Liliana. It's a different phase of her life, but it still fits very much with her character. She is trying to, in a way, deal and change her situation rather than accepting the fate that's upon her. She tried to change her brother's death and it failed. She tried to gain more power through the chain veil and through demonic contracts. Whilst at the time, I'm sure she thought it was all great and her life was brilliant, she's come to realize that that part of her life failed too. She couldn't even get out of the contracts once she'd defeated all the demons, you know. She tried to kill Bolas because she felt that, you know, that would be taking action of her life, and that attempt failed as well because someone else, you know, proved her wrong about that situation. And she's still trying to do it here. She can't accept that this is the situation of her life. She's unhappy with it. So she's trying to find a way to actively change it. And I think although her motivations and her kind of attitude towards it is obviously different and has progressed, it's really nice to see some consistency in a character, because this is who she is fundamentally, which makes her acceptance at the end of this arc all the better. And I just think that it was fucking home run for me. Yeah. Like, this is why I was so thrilled, really, to be reading her stories, despite the fact I didn't really want to see any of the Gatewatch characters for like another 3 years in the story, really. Like, bringing her back for this, even though I think she was probably the most crowbarred thing in this story, she was the best part about it.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's funny that the story didn't necessarily need her, but it was better for having her in there. I like this idea of her kind of coming back into her own again, reaccepting her name, you know, addressing the closing statement of these stories being like, "Good morning, class. I'm your teacher, Liliana Vess." You're like, "Oh, nice, okay." That's it. It's almost like curtains, you know, curtains draw, and the audience will claps. You know, like it was quite nice to see. I like her in a mentor figure, because we've seen so much of her going through this like murky grey kind of area where you can relate, and it's cool all the things she's been through. Like, yeah, I'd take a demonic like, you know, in the fantasy realm of, she does all of the things that you typically do as a black mage or as a black character, so it makes sense. But it's weird, yeah, to see someone who's typically very pragmatic going through almost the same mistakes and the same issues before kind of, yeah, finally realizing, okay, accept, move on, be better, or be a new person. Well, I guess being a new person.
Just accept that things aren't going to go your way, and the best thing you can do is use your powers for the betterment of other people rather than from the betterment of your own sort of existence. Because she wasn't being an arsehole trying to bring Gideon back. It's a very noble cause, but the thing she was falling down on is she was still trying to change her situation, sort of in a self-centered manner, which, you know, is very, very relatable. There's also like, we'll move on I think in a second, but there's one little point about her story as well, which is a nice little touch to kind of link her again to all the other members of the Gatewatch. Throughout all the stories where we've seen Jason, Nissa, and Liliana in these web fictions, they are all learning little lessons from Gideon. They all reference the idea that he would be proud of me in this moment. What would Gideon do? I need to be a leader like Gideon was. And so it's nice to have this little legacy. Like, Gideon wasn't one of my favorite characters by any means. I think I've said this in the past, but he's proven himself to be, even after he's gone in the story, to be a very potent ideal for the other characters to live up to. And I just think it's a really nice little touch. They don't linger on it too long. It's just a little couple of lines here and there. I think it's really cool.
I do think, yeah, absolutely. I think the one thing I found strange about Liliana's character, specifically like how she interacts with the rest of the story, is that why were the rest of the faculty so dismissive of her warnings? Like, why isn't Casmina, who's got eyes and ears everywhere, why isn't she talking to Liliana going, oh, you've noticed as well, these are occasions, maybe we should do something. It felt very much like she was the one person who didn't need to be in the story, telling everyone else what the story was going on around them, and everyone was ignoring her. That for me, that felt a bit disjointed.
Interesting. I took that as sort of a support of Ecstasy's and Luca's distrust of Strixhaven. Like Strixhaven, we don't see much of it in the main story, to be honest, because that is what the side stories are for. But I kind of feel like the deans especially are quite arrogant about their position, and that Ecstasy's main issue about, well, they're the ones that hoard all the magic. They don't appreciate things that they can't sort of understand, and they want people just to do magic their way. I think it's something that Luca says about the Dragon Guard, about who are the people who are the kind of like sort of the policing force for the dragons, if you like, in Strixhaven. What happens when the Dragon Guard, start deciding what magic people can and can't do, kind of thing. It becomes police state. So
who
I think
polices the police?
Yeah, so I think the fact that all the other students are kind of dismissing Liliana's warnings about the Arik is because they don't see them as a threat, and they're like, oh, are there murderous people running around the school? Oh, well, that doesn't matter. I've got a lesson to teach. I think it's kind of to support Extus in a little way.
There was a big stroke of naivety, it felt like, throughout
naivety. That's it.
Yeah, it's really strange. It's funny because I consider, as much as she is enigmatic, I consider Casmina to be quite like omniscient, as it were. Like, she seems to come across as being quite all-knowing, and
yeah, well, she never seems to be quite in the moment, does she? She's always looking at
she's always on the
people,
periphery, right? She always seems to be keeping the feelers out there, which is interesting, because if we do eventually find out more about her, it'll maybe justify that a little bit more. But it did make her feel a little bit superfluous, as it were, when I feel like she should be one of like the strongest figures within the story. She could have very easily taken some of the roles that I wouldn't have minded Liliana's story, for example, not involving Will and Rowan, and Casmina specifically being the one who's trying to get them to pay more attention, and Casmina had the interaction because then Liliana could be off doing her thing. But it did feel strange that it was all the off-world people, right, that have only been there a little while, that are invested. And maybe that's the whole point, right? They've got the outside view. Everyone else is so invested within the system that they don't see the system being broken, or seeing the warnings as they happen. Yeah.
Or indeed bringing their own hang-ups, like Luca, from other planes, and seeing, kind of coming out the other way of sort of going, of seeing the naivety and the kind of like, oh, well, you think you're safe, but you're really not. Or seeing that, no, you guys are in danger, and like, your system is broken, and it kind of comes at it from a negative idea. Yeah, I think you're 100% right. I think it's cool.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, let's talk about Luca if we're going to be...
Yeah, let's talk about Luca. I didn't mind. I know, like, I didn't mind that he was only in it a little bit. I know that you wanted him to be a little bit more fleshed out. I mean, how did you find him in this compared to how he was in Sundered Bond?
So I'm very happy with how they handled. Like, I think there are some people like feel like a fish out of water, whereas Luca felt perfect for this, to serve, as you say, this role of seeing the negativity and giving it almost justification. Like the fact that he was so vehemently shunned from everyone that he tried to seek shelter and food with. Like it felt very relatable. I felt like I understand his point of view. He's gone from being cast out from the last plane, having committed some war crimes, and then
just a little bit of war crime,
and then obviously he's taken on all this massive power from the Ozolith, and now he's in this new plane with this. I guess to him, his brain might still be a little bit kind of trying to settle down, but then he gets ostracized from a place that he's trying to go to, and it's like I understand like his motivation, as it were, and why he was sympathetic to Extus's cause. I mean, not only is he inherently a bad guy, like he has all he leans into the negativity, which is very annoying, because then he also bonds with a fox, which for me is finding it very difficult to weigh whether I like him or don't like him. I mean, you can like someone that's a bad person, right?
Right. So, okay, this is my big point about Luca. And this is because this is in response to a lot of people's reactions from him in Sundered Bond, and sort of recently when he comes back into the story. And it also links up with, at time of recording, the TV show The Falcon and the Winter Soldier has been out, which is the Disney Plus MCU thing.
All right, Mr. Walker, yeah.
Yeah, so there's a character in that show called John Walker, who, I'm not going to spoil anything for you now, but he is a character who is a soldier, who is trained, and is maybe not best positioned to be in the kind of front-facing hero role that he's been thrust into. And I think Luca and the sort of same arguments against Luca being like just a toxic bro is a term that I've kind of found been thrown around, or just outwardly evil, or oh, who is this like asshole who's running around in the story? Like, what a horrible, horrible person he is. I've been levied against the John Walker character, and I think their story arcs are actually very similar. So it just kind of it dovetailed quite nicely in like sort of pop culture outside of Magic. And my point is that yeah, they're bad people, and they are doing very evil things. But to dismiss their stories as being as one note as, say, Extus, or even like Obnixilis, or other sort of cartoony villains like in Magic, they are far more nuanced and actually far more vital for the story in their role than I think a lot of people give them credit for. Luca is doing these terrible things because he was raised in a society to be exactly the man who he is, and he upheld those values, which was seen as positives within his own society. So right there and then, you can't just kind of go, well, he's a terrible person. It's like, well, no, he's a very good person in his own world. And then his world gets turned upside down through something that's not his fault. He becomes a bonder.
It utterly turns on him, which is almost exactly what happened with the people of Strixhaven. So
yeah, exactly. So he is a man who is trying to do the very best he can to the standards that he was taught were correct, gets shunned by the very society that told him those values for something that wasn't his fault, and then his own natural tendencies of, yes, maybe not being as stable or as morally justified as he thought he once was, takes him down a dark path. He's not a good person, but he's certainly not the kind of one note villain, like just straight out the bag. Oh, he's evil. Like there are layers to and nuances to him, which are also very pertinent.
Misled, almost, right? Yeah.
Misguided, and that's very pertinent to our own society. Like I don't want to get like super like on my high horse about it, but if you kind of accept that everyone in this world is human and flawed and has hopes and dreams and has everything that makes a person, it's very hard once you actually start digging into that to kind of discard whole swathes of society as just being evil, just black and white. They're an evil thing. There's always context and nuance to everyone's decisions and motivations. Some people revel in that a lot more than others, which definitely puts them on a certain end of the spectrum. But I think if there's a certain level of, I'm going to use the word empathy, and it sounds a little bit wishy-washy, but that's kind of what it takes. Like a certain level of empathy is needed to kind of understand where those who would seek to hurt others are coming from. Even like the worst people in our society, you want to kind of dig down into why they are the way that they are, rather than just locking them up and throwing away the key, which is something that we kind of understand now is not the way to deal with people. So yeah, I just kind of wanted to like flag that up. I think Luca is very good for Magic because there will be a redemption arc for him at some point.
This is what I was just about to ask you. Yeah, it looks like if you compare the arc that he got in this story compared to Exus, who got very little background, very little justification for his actions, which you shouldn't have to do. Right? You shouldn't justify why your villains. Well, I guess if you want a super nuanced story, then all motivations should be justified at some point or another. But Luca got way more depth and nuance kind of put into his character, and again, it's still he's not gone past the point of no return yet. Right? It still feels like he's on this slippery slope and he can't quite get his footing, and each time he tries to catch his footing, something else trips him up again.
He's not a cold-blooded murderer.
No,
at this point, no.
No, I feel like he's just a man who's found himself in situations trying to do the best he can with it, and we need to give him the opportunity to do better. And I'm glad that they've set him up for the fall, because I feel like that's going to hopefully then bring him back round again. It's a much more interesting arc to have to see someone rise from from the depths of villainy. In the same way, it's nice to see a hero fall from favor. Like these are the more interesting arcs. And again, they could have just presented him like they did with Exus, without having any kind of justification or anything like that. And they didn't. They gave him some agency, as it were, and some reasoning, which is good because it means that clearly they didn't want him just to come across as a purely negative character.
Yeah, 100%. So I'm liking Luca's story. I'm glad they didn't give him the redemption arc now, because I feel like he is a villain. Like we said on this podcast many times, like we're not trying to like vie for like the Luca Club of being like, no, he's really a hero. He's not. He is a villain and he is an antagonist and he should be treated as one. But whereas say Nahiri, for example, because she's a good example of like an anti-hero.
Both red white as well. Interesting.
Yeah, both red white. Like where she's an anti-hero where people are like, well, we can identify with her justifiable reasons for kind of going off the deep end and doing things that are slightly villainous. I think Luca is very much on that spectrum. He's just at the other end, where he is so fully delved into kind of aggression and toxic nature that he's now siding with villains with very little provocation otherwise. Whereas Nahiri, you can kind of sort of see, she sees herself as a hero, whereas I think Luca doesn't see himself as a hero, but as like a smasher of institutions, which kind of puts him on the back end of the spectrum. Like, but I still
he's a fucking
feel
anarchist, isn't he?
yeah,
Basically,
I still feel like they're very much on the same wavelength. And people can disagree with me. People can kind of take to Twitter and stuff to kind of debate me on that, because people have strong feelings about these characters one way or another. But I do see them as being kind of two sides of a coin.
Sure, I'd be interested to see how they would converse and like how they'd see each other's points of view.
I don't think they'd get on.
I don't. I think this is the funny thing, right? The more I feel like antagonists, when they meet other antagonists that are similar to them, tend to dislike each other more because of the similarity of like they're both like, no, that I'm the white red justified villain. You can't also be the red white just I feel like I guess also their points of view are going to be very different, right? Again, Nahiri's considerably older than most characters in Magic, so there's this whole kind of like. Again, we've seen Luca from the beginning. We got a whole book with him, so we've actually got quite a lot of his subtleties. Whereas with other characters, we don't necessarily get that as much. So he's a little easier to sympathise with, as you said.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess that's just the message: is don't discount Luca's character or characters like Luca, just because you relate and sort of see the toxic aspects of their nature. 100%, that's how they're written, and that is how they are. But behind toxicity is a myriad of contextual factors that I think they've done well to show in Magic, which is why I was always a little bit like, you're sort of glossing over a lot of very good writing to his character. I think that's it. I think a lot of people just have taken him at face value, which I don't think you should do.
I think it's also hard because he was kind of misrepresented with the way he was on the cards and in the story. That, yeah. So people still don't know where to sit on him, and even now it's like, oh, look at the guy, cool fox guy, and then they realise he's an antagonist. They're like, well, you took away my favourite character, and now he's an arsehole. It's like, good. Well, maybe you should have read the character from the beginning instead of just assuming because he's got a fox, he's cool, which I do anyway.
Also, they should not misrepresent him on the cards, because the Ikoria cards were very different to the stories. That is fair enough.
Yeah, he's had a very mixed bag of representation, which is.
But I can't wait. I can't wait to see more of him, and he will get a redemption arc. Mark my words. Let's talk about Will and Rowan, because this is their story, right? Okay, so here I buried the lead very, very much so earlier on when I said I don't think their story is represented very well. Here was my big problem with it. I think with 5 episodes, you need to tell a lot more of their story in the early stages than spending 4 episodes of having them bicker and fight every time we see them.
Yeah, there wasn't a lot of different, we didn't see different sides, and it was the same note each episode with maybe slightly in a slightly different key, but it was the same note, It was
the same thing. It was the same pattern, so they would be doing the twin thing, like in previous stories that we've seen them. So we've seen them in the Wood of Quest, and obviously we know that they were on Kylem and part of Battle Bond, and they seemed all pretty chummy there. And on a lot of the cards, we see them being very much in sync with each other, and that's the whole crux of this story: is that they're starting to unsynchronize from each other, which they don't quite understand, because it's our metaphor for growing up and finding yourself, which is what college is all about, and that's brilliant. And they're kind of showing it through their literal magics kind of starting to not gel together like they did in Kylem. But every single interaction with them was, they would try to do a thing. Will would get upset with Rowan because Rowan's not taking things seriously. Rowan would get upset with Will because he's being an oppressive douchebag. Will says something horrible to Rowan. Rowan storms off, and that is the same every single time. That's the same.
It sometimes happens multiple times in the same chapter.
In the same chapter, right? And that's a fine argument to have, and it's kind of a very relatable rhythm, and it's used a lot of the time in storytelling because that is how arguments go. You both have an issue with each other, and because neither of you want to admit that you're the one in the wrong, one of you says something horrible and the other one storms off. That's what arguments are. I just didn't need to see it 4 times to get the point that they aren't happy with each other.
Yeah, we've seen enough sibling rivalries across sitcoms that we don't need it in our magic stories as much. Like, there was a literal, I just wish you stayed dead moment. You're like, well, great, good. Did you just lift that directly from from what's the break as Even Stevens? There we go, Even Stevens.
Oh god, with Shia LaBeouf.
Yeah, exactly. Like that. That's what it reminded me of a little bit. Yeah, it felt like they de-aged by about 5 years. It felt like when I was first reading, I was like, okay, I expect them to be adolescent, right? Like 18 to 21-ish. And in this, it felt like they were more teenage. It felt like they were more, 14, 15. But I also think that you hit that on the head. Like there's a much more interesting story here of why their magic isn't working, and it even hints at this at the end of where we're saying like, we've got another semester here, so we can learn more about who we are and how our sparks work and why we have to planeswalk together. Like, that's much more interesting than just them bickering all the time. I did really, really like the fact that they split up, and both of them hung out with different schools, right? As much they're both considered to be Prismari, like Will's hanging out with Quintorius, and
that's Lawhold, yeah.
Lawhold, and then Rowan was obviously with her Witherbloom friends, which I really like this idea.
Overnine was one of the characters. Overnine and Plink.
Yes, Plink, exactly. Yeah. Yes, yeah. And I like the fact that they both went to different college. It creates an even greater gap between them, right? And it kind of showed that even though they are blue-red walkers, one of them has. I mean, Rowan, we didn't get a lot. This is the thing. We get most of it from Will's point of view, right? I think there's very little from Rowan's point of view until we get to the end, and we see her kind of when we see our point of view of her. Channeling the snarl. That we don't get. Most of it we see is from Will's point of view, which I can kind of understand. I wouldn't mind seeing a bit more of Rowan's carefree nature. But maybe it's more boring, right? Maybe that's just like, I'm just going to do what I want, and I'm just going to keep doing what I want, and it's not necessarily a story that's particularly interesting. But I would have been much more. It's the first thing they say when they get to that first duel, where it's like, oh, our magic isn't working the same way it used to. For me, that set up massive flags in my head. I'm like, oh, what's going on with the magic on Strixhaven? And it kind of it never really comes to full fruition. And at the end, all we get is that Rowan's got stronger and Will's got more to liberate with his action. I felt like, well, Will's got the kind of short end of the stick. Not only does he lose his leg, which good representation, by the way, having this frost like a metal kind of amalgamation of an appendage, which I think is really cool.
Will's new like prosthetic leg. He doesn't want the living wood that one of the Witherbloom professors was going to give him. He has a metal structure that he encases in ice that he has to constantly replenish. Yeah,
which is very cool. But again, it comes to the end of where we get this hint of like, oh, there's something more interesting in like the way their magic works, and these are the kind of things that I really find interesting. And instead, we just got a brother and sister fighting, which is fine. Yeah. If I again, it felt
no, that would be fine as the premise for their arc, and then we can move through and maybe sort of see them do individual things individually. Whereas most of the time, again, it's only what do? You only have 5 episodes.
Exactly, like it's so frustrating.
2 episodes, one where you just follow Will doing his thing, one where you follow Rowan doing her thing, all whilst doing other character stories, or do you do which is what we got, which is you show the kind of highlights of their kind of ramping up arguments.
Well, what you do, Andy, is you make the block 2 sets so that you get to a culmination of a story in the first set, and then you can have the payoff in the second set, right? This is what you fucking do, Wizards.
Change the block structure to help.
Stop doing one. Literally, stop doing one for every. It's fine when we go to an old plane we've seen before, and we're picking up characters we've already seen before. And it's just like almost like an extra chapter, right? This is a whole new arc with new characters, more stuff going on, and a whole new world. And you do it in 3 months. Everyone's going to forget about it, and it'll be Dungeons and Dragons. You know, like that's the kind of thing that kind of gets me, because it's very difficult. As you say, what do? You're stuck. You're trying to tell a big nuanced like world building story, but you don't have the time to do it in, so you kind of go for the beat by beat. It's nice to see a bit of the arguments between them. If you didn't read Wielded Quest, then you actually get some characterization that's easily digestible from both of the twins, but you don't actually get anything that's particularly interesting. Like you're not learning anything new or fantastic about them. It's just okay, cool. There's some argument. Like Will comes across really badly in this, right?
I think they both do. I don't like either of them.
Exactly, and that's a problem, because for some people this will be the first time we get story, because we didn't get an Eldraine web fiction, we got an Eldraine novel, which means if you didn't read that, you don't actually know anything more outside of this block. And again, I don't think it does them justice for their characters. I don't think it does them justice for, I mean, their abilities come across really well, apart from what it's mostly just sparks and ice. Like the nuance in the way that they kind of talk about their magic is actually really interesting. But yeah,
one thing I've always liked about Will and Rowan with their magic and being blue and red is that they are sparks and ice and not fire and water. I don't know why, but just having that little kind of like, no, not everything is hydromancy, pyromancy. Do you know what I mean? Like, yes. I actually like that. No, she's a spark mage. I think that's kind of cool, because it is slightly
that is very cool.
Something I really liked about their culmination of their arc in this, and in fact their whole like last little bit in the battle with the Blood Avatar, their little reconciliation there and their kind of coming together was a payoff. But I think it was more of a payoff just from me having read the Wielded Quest. Like almost if you lifted out some of the Strixhaven stuff and just went, oh, and then they fought a Blood Avatar and this is what happened, I'd go, oh, that's a nice little coming together. Because I do actually think there are certain lines in there which I thought was really cool. There's a line where Rowan gets battered away by the Blood Avatar when she tries to Dark Phoenix it, and Will says for her to trust him because he knows that there's a spell that he's going to do, but she needs to just calm down for a fucking second and just like help him out. And there's the line which she goes, her smart peevish brother, he was so often right, so maybe he's right now. And that was a really vindicating moment for me to be like, Yes, do you know what?
Absolutely.
It's actually very gratifying in stories where there's a character who's correct a lot of the time, but because he's an annoying prick who won't shut the fuck up, people don't listen to him because they don't want to admit that the person who's being annoying is correct. So it's a really vindicating moment where the characters kind of lift the story haze from their eyes and go, oh, hang on a minute. The person in our party who's super intelligent is telling us to do something. Maybe we should actually listen to them. Like, I thought it was just a really nice moment. And it's also, I really did like the fact that the story didn't just gear up to being like, oh no, Rowan's might is right aspect was going to win the day. It does need the both of them to kind of do it, because the story did kind of ramp it up as, well, Rowan's just going to keep being as powerful as she wants, and Will's annoying nature is going to get like, it's holding her back. Like, no, it's not holding her back. They need to come together. But as you say, Will doesn't come across very well because he can't just let her do what she wants to do. Like, and he keeps comparing her to their witch birth mother. Like, fuck off, mate.
It even says like several times in the story, like he could have stopped and he carries on.
God.
And you're like, just if you, and this is the thing, it's like from a writing point of view, like if you as a writer are telling him that, he should probably stop and then he doesn't, that's not necessarily writing a character flaw in. That's breaking your character down a little bit because you're taking away the potential for him to make the right decision, right? And it's they both came across quite one-dimensional, and I think that's the issue, because we didn't get to film. For me, the payoff didn't quite pay off, because even right up until the point of where they finally join forces and do something together, there was still this dissonance between them, and this again, Rowan was just really bratty, and it kind of came across that they got very lucky right at the end. It wasn't because they're powerful and they could do something together that no one else could do, which is kind of what I thought they were going to lean in. It was only the twins that could do it by having this combination of their powers. It kind of just felt like they were in the right place at the right time, and then happened to be quite strong.
Well, also the spell that Will used on the Blood Avatar wasn't something that he found in deep research. It's something that he witnessed on the Mage Tower pitch. And his mate went, oh, this person's using a spell to control the other person's mascot. That's something that's very simple, but any summoned creature can do it. And he just remembered it. And I was like, that doesn't really pay off the hours he spent in the Biblioplex, does it?
Yeah, what's the card? There's a card, isn't there, saying it's...
Culmination of studies.
You've got practical research, which never happens in the story. We never see the two of them studying together, looking like they're having fun, which practical research, it looks like they're having a nice fun time. Maybe we're back to misrepresentation on the story spotlight cards. But then, yeah, as you say, there's also the culmination of studies, which is fine. Like, I don't think it's nice to see a blue and a red mage doing an active treason effect, because that's what both of the colours do. I quite liked that it's like, cool, that works. That works practically in my mind. You know, it's a token, so even think something like Threads of Disloyalty would work on it. So the metaphysics work in cards as well. So I think it was, it just did feel a little bit like, he lucked out by remembering that thing, and had he not gone to that one Mages contest, well, I guess the entire plane was screwed, you know? I guess also, where are all the teachers and all that? I know they were distracted. This
is another big issue for me, where this happens a lot in films as well. I don't know why this is the thing that writers keep going back to, where you have the big battle, but then it cuts away to all the people on the ground being like, oh, there's a big battle going on, we've got to do this. It's like, no, show me the battle. It's like Godzilla versus sorry, the original Godzilla film had this problem, didn't it? A lot of people were saying they were about to see Godzilla and Mothra like kick the crap out of each other,
and it keeps going back to the humans.
Keeps going back to the scientists.
No one gives a shit about them.
Amazing.
No one cares about the stupid scientists. Yeah, there was again. They did it. There was a prime example of Will felt heat above him, and it's like, the dragons had arrived, and then it cuts away. You're like, fucking give me dragons! What are you doing? Yeah, it was very. There was again. I don't know. Some of the story, it just felt like they were too separate from each other. I know that Liliana's just happened to know of a secret tunnel that no one else knew about that goes to the most important part of the school.
Sure.
And she also just happened to know it was a distraction. Like, how did she know it was a distraction? Oh, I've seen this before. She's not a fucking tactician. She's not been on the front of like multiple armies and wars and that kind of thing, and seen like, this is just a diversion tactic. Like, it felt very easy. There was a lot of things that were just kind of like just given to you that didn't necessarily feel like they were earned. And again, it was maybe this tick in the boxes, painting by numbers thing, that you have to get all of these plot points in. So you kind of sometimes just have to go, it just happens, don't think about it. And it's like, cool. Now I'm thinking about it though. In the moment it was fine, and I got carried away, and you read into the story and you don't notice it. But when you look back on it in reflection, like, there was a lot of aspects of convenience. They didn't even leave Exodus like alive at the end to have some fallout afterwards, right? It was just like, he's dead, he's gone, cool, that's it.
Right. So
line through the name.
Here we go. So I mentioned this when we did the story breakdown. And it's the bit where he gets killed. And this, for me, is just sums up the whole Exodus tonal shift throughout this entire story. And like, okay, we're in full whinge mode now. We haven't got much time left, but I think we've just got to keep this going. The line before the Blood Avatar literally crushes the man to death is, "You brats, how dare you?" Like he's on fucking Top Cat or something.
Yep, literally, it's terrible. Like, because when we first find out about him, he knows about Luca, he knows about... He seems to know more than he lets on, and we find nothing about it apart from, I'm Smoky Mask Guy. Cool, great. I was kicked out of my college. I'm going to blow it up. Cool, right. Anything else? Nope, that's it. Time to die. Good, fantastic. Thanks, Exodus. Good to see you. You know, thanks. We'll catch you next time.
So, yeah, I think suffice to say, I think it's... all of these problems, I think, could have been mitigated again by having maybe more story time, or maybe a slight restructuring of the story. I don't know. It's tough.
Mm-hmm. A novel would have been good for this.
Maybe,
arc,
maybe.
Right? Yeah, but again, we understand it's better to have web fiction that's accessible, that they're guaranteed to do all the time, than a potential novel that might mean that the story never gets going again and eventually peters out. So I'm not going to complain that we're getting story. It's just it's very noticeable when you have single sets, block after block after block, that they just have to rush through, not only putting all of the mechanics in so the sets are quite powerful and pokey, but you don't get time to kind of sit with any of the characters before moving on to the next one, and all of the plot points have to kind of happen within a month and a half, which some stories I feel like won't get the justification they won't get the time that they're justified to have, right?
That's fair enough. I have a lot of questions for Strixhaven, which I can't really go into now because it would take too much time. But there are things that I hope we get to see if we ever come back. For example, the oracles seem to be a lot more important.
The avatars, right, as well. The
avatars.
Yeah, we didn't get to.
The archaics,
maybe this is maybe this is a whole episode of where we talk about the things that, because I think we're coming back, right? They've left Liliana Vess here. They've left both the twins here. Casmina's still here. Again, the art book for the Spark hinted at Casmina knowing about a bigger threat on the horizon. I think this is a setup block, right? This is a setup set, which is fine, but which is again like the actual events that happen within it. Oh, they got attacked by some mage hunters and that's it. It's actually a very small story beat. It's very small in the scale of a plane, and it's actually, they even say, it's like, it's not the worst thing that's ever happened, and something else will happen again. Like, they even have that line in there, which shows it's almost like day in the life of Strixhaven. So maybe that's also another thing, is we wanted like a full fleshed out thing, whereas this is just like the first look at the plane, and there's a lot of other questions that will be answered in the future.
I think for me, and I said it at the top of the show, I'm going to repeat it now, this story didn't give me what I wanted out of a Strixhaven story. And as much as actually maybe in the broad scheme of things, like, that doesn't really matter, because this is what's needed to push forward the plot of Magic the Gathering as a broader story arc. For me, I think the side stories are just going to provide what I wanted more. So I think a lot of my complaints about this story, and a lot of the more maybe nuanced, smaller story arcs, which I liked, are obviously going to be fulfilled a lot better when we have the 5 individual stories that are just looking at one microcosm of a student doing their student-y thing. And they might bump into like Professor Onyx, or they might bump into Will and Rowan here and there, whatever they want to do. Whereas I think for Kaldheim and kind of a flip reverse, actually no, Zendikar was more prevalent of this. I enjoyed the side stories of Zendikar a lot, but actually the kind of main story with Nissa and Jace and all those guys, I think was much better.
Yeah.
Whereas this, I think, is the flip round. Strixhaven, big battle, mage battle, whatever. That could have happened in the background of me trying to look at like Ruther trying to perfect her like art. Do you know what I mean? Like I would much prefer that. So I think that's where I am with it. I really like I like where they landed with all the characters. Like the ending episode with all the little wrap up is exactly where I wanted them to be at the end of it. It was just the journey that maybe didn't chill with me.
Yeah. I feel like they've done a good. I did literally just say about the characterization being maybe a bit weak, but I think that they did. Yeah, they, considering the amount of characters they had, I don't think at the end of it, none of them felt like they came off badly. They all got what I got from the characters, kind of what I expected from the get go. I didn't expect more from Will and Rowan than to have that dichotomy between the two of them. That was their overarching theme. We got closure on Liliana. Luca didn't have a turncoat moment of coming back around to the good side. The only thing I will say is that I kind of wanted a bit more Casmina, but again, she's the enigmatic sage, so I guess that's probably not going to happen for a while. But yeah, I don't actually have like broad complaints. It's only when you get into the nitty gritty that it's like, okay, maybe this.
Well, it's like all of it. Like, I think we appreciate that the story is there, and more is more. It's just, I think the Kaldheim story was so, as much as it was very quick, and like the battle got ramped up very fast, and our complaint was that we didn't see anything of like a lot of the other realms. I don't know. It suited that story a lot better than this one, and I think that's the problem.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly, right? And even in that story, there was things that were missing. And again, if you're creating a world that makes me want more from it, then I think you've done a good representation of it. This just felt a little bit blasé, I think. But again, it's not kill. It didn't kill the set for me. And as you say, the side stories, if you want to get into the day in the life of, which I know is the kind of thing that we like anyway. So yeah, it's fine.
I think maybe we're in these episodes, because obviously not in our general bulk of work, because it's what we're all about. But I think in these story episodes, we're too ready to dismiss the idea that actually a lot of the storytelling is on the cards, and the fact that they have way more story spotlight cards in this set than any other set is probably where we need to kind of appreciate the bulk of the narrative lifting, because a lot of story does get told on those cards. So maybe we need to just shut the fuck up and play the game.
Play with the cards, guys. Stop reading stories.
Yeah, why are you reading story articles? Get a game in, you arseholes.
Oh wait, this is a card game? Oh, okay, I didn't realise.
Yeah, I think we forget, don't we? This story supports the card game. It's not the other way around. There was one line, and it was in the very first story. It made me laugh out loud on the tube. People look at me like I'm mental, but I was just like, oh god, I was very cringe, like in world. They go up to the campus of Strixhaven, and they see the whole, like, all the buildings and the campus stretching out for miles, and I think it's one of them turns to the other and says, wow, this is even bigger than our castle back home. I thought, oh, fuck you, 1%. Like, Jesus Christ.
That's so true. It's so true.
Oh, is the college bigger than Madame's castle at home? Like, oh, fuck you.
Oh, God, that's amazing. That's fantastic. Yeah. The privilege, yeah.
Unbelievable amount of privilege.
Very
but
funny.
Then, you know, if you're royalty of an entire plane, whatever, I guess.
Yeah, they can't help who they are, right? But it's funny. I hope that's deliberate. I hope that's a deliberate slight of fuck you, 1%ers. That's so funny.
All right, guys. I think that'll do it for our Strixhaven story review. I'm aware that we didn't touch on a lot of other things because this was such a packed out story arc, to be honest with you, which, you know, as discussed in the past hour and a half, was some of our problems and also some of the good things as well. If there's anything that you want to talk to us about specifically, or anything you want to kind of pick us apart about, maybe you think that I'm giving Luca way too much credit, maybe you think I'm being very unfair on Will and Rowan, maybe you think that we should have done a massive breakdown on the rules and regs of Mage Tower, which I'd love to do because they didn't give us any fucking rules in the story.
No, they gave us a stadium though. Like, I mean, the card is much.
The card is great.
Yeah, much cooler than any part of, like, because we didn't get. Yeah, I mean, again, reading people write about sport isn't necessarily going to be enthralling reading, right?
Fuck you, sports journalists.
Well, yeah, okay. I'm saying, this is coming from somebody who's a big sports fan. I'm just saying, like, from a literal point of view, we don't read Magic to watch to read about them playing a sport, like, right? I mean, I wouldn't mind, as you say, like a little list. If we just had a little excerpt one week of, like, the rules of Mage Tower, you know.
Give me the mobile game. Give me the Mage Tower.
Oh my god,
game.
yeah, that'd be sick.
I'd play the shit out of that.
Make it happen, Wizards.
You can hit us up on Twitter if you want. If any app developers want to talk to me about the Mage Tower game app, you can hit us up on Twitter at mtflavouring. Our emails go to mtflavouring@gmail.com. My personal Twitter is at AndyManface. Nathan's, yours is
at the Fox in the Moon.
You will be listening to this episode Sunday the 25th at the earliest, so this won't be pertinent to people in the future, but to the people who are able to travel to the past. We are going to be playing on TOTALmtg's Twitch channel. We're going to be playing some Commander today, and I'm very excited because I'm going to test out the new Prismari deck with 9 upgrades. I put in 9 different cards. You're playing Lorehold today, right? 1, 2,
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, I've got 11 cards that I want to try and find space for.
Oh, you cheat!
Probably won't. They probably won't.
Cheat.
What, is it supposed to be just 10? All right, fine. We
won't. No, it's not. I don't know what the rules were.
But playing Lorehold. It should be exciting.
But it's us two, TOTALmtg, who I believe is playing Quandrix, and then Mr. Bevers, who's a great YouTube channel. If you've not checked out the Mr. Bevers YouTube channel, check it out. I think he's going for Silver Cord today. We're going to be throwing down some Strixhaven decks, and I hear tell that they are very cool decks. If the game goes well for either or one of us, I might upload the VOD link to the description, and if it goes terribly, you can search that out for yourself. But yeah, do go subscribe to TOTALmtg's Twitch channel and his YouTube, because he's a very good friend of ours and he does really good stuff, so check it out. Other than that, guys, I don't think there's any final ideas or brain thoughts to kind of go through, because it's a very sunny day. I want to go out for a walk.
I want to get some daytime.
For sure. So all that remains for me to say is thank you so much for listening. This has been Magic the Flavouring.
We'll see you soon.